Pastor NaTavia.
And I'm Pastor Antonio.
And welcome to Testimony Tuesdays.
Listen, do me a huge favor. You need to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so you're notified every single time that we are here on Testimony Tuesdays every single week. You do not want to miss these. I promise you, you're going to be upset if you do, so like and subscribe.
We are back for yet another episode. We are so excited. Listen, we are doing back shooting. We're not dirty. These are not last week's clothes. These are the same clothes because we're taking 2, we're taking 3, taking 4, so we can get all this yummy information out to you. We want to make sure that it comes to you, that you're able to get it so it can bless your life. And so we're doing whatever is necessary to get these things over.
And so you're going to see this a couple more times.
Yes, you will. Okay? All right. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about the testimony of the $6,000.
$6,000.
$6,000. All right?
That is amazing.
God is absolutely amazing. Listen, if you believe in God for a financial testimony, a financial breakthrough in your life, this is one that you want to listen to. God has blessed us so much in our marriage where finances is concerned. We've had to believe for some money.
Yeah.
And God is
been faithful.
He's been faithful.
Every single
time that we've needed it, He's been absolutely faithful to do it. Now, listen, I must warn you, if you have kids that are watching today, this gets a little heavy. This testimony gets a little heavy, and it talks about some real life things that I dealt with and that I was going through at that time. It gets really real. So this may not be the episode for them to sit in on. Viewer discretion is advised. Now, don't worry, it's nothing gory, nothing crazy like that, but it is dealing with some real stuff, so just be mindful.
Yep. And so how did we get to the 6,000?
Because we was broke. We was broke, right? How did we get to the 6,000? So I remember this was 2017, I believe. 2017, 2018-ish. I was driving for Uber, and man, I was hustling. I was driving for Uber. I was driving for Lyft. I had the rental car I had all the programs possible where Uber and Lyft was concerned. And then we finally had gotten a brand new car. And then as soon as we got that brand new car, we found out the day after that we were pregnant with baby number 4. Baby number 4. The day after, we got a brand new 3-seater in the back. Okay, where are we gonna put a 4-car seat? Somebody got to ride on the ceiling, on the top, on the roof. It's got to happen, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, we got 9 months to figure this part out. How we gonna get another car? But I was driving really heavy. I mean, I ran that car 55,000 miles in
less than 6 months.
In less than 6 months, it was probably like 4, maybe 4.5 months.
Yeah.
But here's the God's honest truth. Uber wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough. I was trying to make $100 a day. That wasn't enough. And I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, hoping to catch a good ride from where we lived at that time in Southern Maryland all the way to BWI Airport. I was praying for a girl because I knew that was going to at least be about $75, $80. And then I can catch another good trip going to Baltimore. And so I kind of had this system worked out. So I thought, right?
Right.
And we were really going through, we were really struggling at that time, trying to make ends meet, trying to make things really happen. I think I was playing drums at a church at that time, and I had lost that job. And so that really sent things in a spiral for us. There was no photography business at that time. There was no futures trading at that time. All we had at that time was Uber, Lyft, and me playing drums and being paid for what I did in that arena. And that was a really, really, really rough time. And I remember one day I was just so tired. I was worn down by what we were dealing with and what we were struggling with, trying to pay the bills, trying to make sure we kept up with everything, trying to make sure the rent was paid. The kids need this, the kid needs that, you need this, and you pregnant, you need a whole lot of food too. Boy, man, Maya had you hungry. She had you hungry, man.
Last two.
The last two had you. Harley did too. It's the last 3. That boy's, he's greedy today. I'm convinced that his greediness is a result of the 9 months he spent inside. I'm positive that is why. Y'all have no idea how greedy our son really is. And so everybody needed something. Everybody wanted something. And birthdays is coming up. Christmas is coming up. We got all of this stuff that's going on. And I remember going to the grocery store. And I remember reaching for the Goya. It was some black Goya beans because you wanted a makeshift Chipotle. And you wanted me to make the quesadillas, or not quesadillas, burritos. You wanted burritos at night. And I remember just feeling so bogged down. Literally, I'm reaching for the Goya beans, and I'm crying. I'm in tears at the beans. I'm just standing there holding the beans. It's not funny.
What the beans do to you?
Listen, I have no idea, but it was a moment. And I was standing there, and I was just in tears. And I want to say Ja'Kalen Carr's winning season is what I heard that day. And I had it playing in my AirPods, and I just stood there like, yes, everything attached to me wins. I'm going, like, people are walking past me in the grocery store, and I'm just sobbing at the beans. And I don't know why I didn't take my hands off the beans, but just me and the beans were having a moment. And I was crying. I was just sobbing. I was just in complete tears, just thinking about all that we were going through. And the next day, as usual, got up about 5:30 that morning to get out and to go drive Uber. And I caught a ride to BWI Airport. I was like, yes, this is going to be a great day. Well, about 10 minutes away from the airport, coming down this long stretch of road, I mean, the road is so long that you can do 65, 70 miles an hour for a good period, a good stretch, and not have to worry about traffic lights or anything like that. So we're balling. And we're coming up on this light that we cross over to actually get us into the airport zone, right? And I go to put my foot on the brakes, and the car does not slow down. I said, oh my God. First thing I thought about, my Uber rating, my stars, I'm not going to get 5 stars. My rating is about to go down. We about to die. It was, my rating is going to go down. I took pride in my 5-star rating. All right. And so the brakes wouldn't work. And I'm pressing the brakes. I'm trying not to be super extra. I'm trying to be discreet about it, right? I'm trying to be incognito. It's not working. And I'm like, the brakes. And so I just took my foot off the gas, and I just let the car gradually slow down. It had to be the hand of an angel that literally slowed the car down to bring us to a stop at the red light. The light was only red for about 2 seconds. And then it changed. I was like, whoa, thank you, Jesus. And I put my foot on the gas and start going again. But I'm a little bit more cautious because we got some turns and some curves coming up, and the brakes are still not working. And I'm like, oh my God, my livelihood, the car. We got to get this fixed. How are we going to do this? We barely can afford getting diapers. How in the world are we going to be able to get the brakes fixed on this car? Like, the brakes won't work. I never experienced anything like that in my life. So we start driving across this light. And now we got to go around this ramp in order to get into the departure section of the airport. And the car will not brake. And so, thankfully, it's kind of an incline. So, it's able to slow down just a little bit. And I'm able to get around the curve. And I'm driving very slowly. Guess when the brakes start to work? When I got to the departures, I'm like, really? Now you want to work, right? Now, at 70 miles an hour, you didn't want to work. At 7 miles an hour, you want to work just fine. So we get there, we stop, and the car turns off. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Passenger gets out, he goes on about his day. This lady, I asked her for a jump. This is the airport. It's busy. She has to turn her big Tahoe around to try to give me a jump. It's not working. Called a friend of mine. I said, hey man, can you come and get me? He lived not too far. I said, can you come and get me? The car's broke down. I have no idea what's going on. The tow truck is going to be a while. It's going to take about 90 minutes for this tow truck to come. He said, listen, I'll come. I'll bring my battery jumper and see if maybe I can help jump your car. I was like, look, I already tried that. Didn't work. He said, listen, I'm on my way. You can at least sit in the car with me, you know, to be warm. It started snowing and everything, so you can at least sit in the car with me until it's time. Joe Lee, man, good friends of ours. Absolutely love them, him and Elena. And he came and he sat with me. But before he came, I had a moment where I broke down Because I thought about everything that had happened up until that point. Mm-hmm. Everything that we needed, everything that we were going through. I was just crying with the Goya beans in the grocery store the night before. I was having a moment.
Yeah.
And the enemy got to me. Mm-hmm. While I'm sitting in the car, I get out just to kind of look around to see what's going on. Maybe try and see what's going up under the hood. Maybe I can try to figure this out. Well, one of the airport police officers, he comes now to help redirect traffic because my car is blocking a lane. So he's redirecting traffic. And he's about 10, 15 feet away from me. And the enemy spoke to me. He said, listen. And it was, I heard it just as clear. He said, listen, if you just rush him, because he was sitting on his bike and his gun was facing towards me. And he said, if you just rush him, if you go to him right now, you just rush him. You don't have to touch him. If you just run towards him, he will shoot you and it'll all be over. Wow. Just rush him. He'll shoot you. He'll kill you. It'll all be over. No more suffering. No more financial issues. No more problems. No more feeling like a failure because you can't provide for your family. No more feeling like a failure as a father because you can't provide with what they need. All of that will be over if you just rush him. And I stood there and I just began to weep. And the scary part is I was this close to giving into that. I was so close to giving into the words of the enemy at that time. Mm-hmm. Now, the way that he kind of showed it to me was like, it won't really be considered suicide. It's a suicide by cop. So you're technically not killing yourself. You're not committing suicide. But in essence, I would have been committing suicide because I'm finding a way to get out. Yeah. I'm finding a way to end my life without necessarily it being me. But I'm finding a way to cut this thing short so that I don't have to continue to deal with the things that I'm dealing with. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I had a little bit of faith left in me to say, no, this is not the end.
That mustard seed.
That literally, that mustard seed faith. I never even thought about that. All these years later, it was literally that mustard seed amount of faith that you can't even see with the naked eye. Yeah. That I had in me. And God said, if you just have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to this mountain and tell it to be cast into the sea. I was facing a mountain. Yeah. And my faith stood up in that moment. Yeah. And I'm so thankful to God that I'm still sitting here years later to be able to tell the story of how I overcame that. Yeah. Listen, if you're watching this today and you are in this position where your life just looks like it's in complete shambles. Mm-hmm. Nothing seems to be working. Nothing seems to be going right. Money is acting funny. I don't know why people say that, because money not being right, there's nothing funny about that at all, right? Money's not acting right. Things are going haywire in your life. Hear me when I tell you there is more to your story. Yeah. There's so much. I would have missed out on so much had I ended my life that day. Had I given into what the enemy wanted. See, the enemy only comes to you to get you to end something because he knows that if you push past this one, if you push past this moment, if you get past this mountain, there's greater for you on the other side. There's greater. See, in Job chapter 1, it talks about how Satan was at the meeting with God and the angels. So Satan had an idea of what was on the other side of Job's perseverance. Yeah. He had an idea. He saw the blueprint. He saw the plan. And God said, hey, go ahead, do what you want to do. Go ahead. Touch him. Attack and take everything. Watch what he does for me. Watch how he still loves me. Watch how he still worships me. And the enemy tried his hand. The weapons may form, but they will not prosper against you. Yeah. They will not prosper. And so now the enemy knows. He knows that there's greater on the other side of this situation that you're facing right now. Yeah. There's greater testimonies on the other side of what's going on right now. There's greater. Yeah. There's so much greater. Husbands, I'm talking to you. You're not a failure as a father because of what you're facing right now. You're not a failure as a husband because of what you're facing right now. This temporary situation and this temporary moment, it doesn't define you. It doesn't define who you are, man. I don't know who's watching today that needs to hear that. But it does not define you. Don't let the enemy get into your head. Your son needs you. Your daughters need you. Your wife needs you. There's a world out there that needs you. They need your voice. They need your DNA. Don't let the enemy take that away from you. He don't deserve that. Don't let him take that away from you. And so I stood there and I said, you know what? I can't do this. I can't do this. And just when I made the decision to not go through with that, Joe pulled up. And I was like, boy, I ain't never been so happy to see somebody in my life. Like, it was a moment where I was so ecstatic to see him because I knew that in that moment, that was God showing up for me. That was my way of escape. Yeah. That was my way of escape. The moment that you have faith, everything's got to change. Yeah. The moment that faith shows up on the scene, everything has to change. And because I stood up in faith in that moment, immediately what I needed came up. Okay. And so Joe came and I sat there. He sat with me for about 30 minutes. And tow truck came. I got home. And later that night, I had to go to a rehearsal at another church I started playing at that time, which that was by the grace of God too. Like, it just all kind of happened and all things kind of came together. Mm-hmm. And then while I was in rehearsal, I got a notification on my phone that someone has sowed a seed into our lives, just into us personally, of $6,000. No. That was way more than the $100 I was trying to work for with Uber. Like, there are things that God wants to do for you. I'm getting teary-eyed sitting over here thinking about that. Seriously, like, there are things that God wants to do for us. Yeah. And I asked this question on Facebook earlier today. Why do we expect natural things from a supernatural God? Yeah. Why do we expect God to do things naturally? If we plant apple trees, do we expect to get oranges? Like, why do we expect somebody that's supernatural to do things in a natural way? God wants to blow your mind. Yeah. Uber wasn't going to blow my mind. It took God to lay it on someone's heart to say, you know what? They've been such a blessing to me. They've been such a blessing to my family. Their faith and their words of encouragement were such a blessing. And man, that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what's happening. Like, God came through for us in a major, major way. Yeah. And what were your feelings and what was your thought process when I told you about the situation with the cop and what I was really feeling and going through at that time? And then on the flip side of that, what was your thought process when I told you the testimony of the 6,000 coming to pass?
So I was shocked because we hadn't talked about anything in relation to suicidal thoughts and depression, anything like that. I knew you were under tremendous stress trying to provide for our family, but I didn't know that it was to that magnitude. And so I really believe that you were able to get to that place because you were suffering in silence. And I think that that's a key thing that not a lot of people talk about. And, you know, you can act like, look like, appear to be normal and like everybody else, laughing, smiling, going out, having fun. Preaching, teaching. And at home, it's dark. At home, or just within yourself, it's dark nights, dark moments, and you're suffering, and you don't know how you're going to get through, and you don't know what's next, or you don't know how anything about your life will change. You don't have any sense of hope. And I believe that's an absolute tragedy, because I believe that had we had prior conversations and had we talked through the things that you were feeling and going through, then I don't believe that you would have even gotten to that point. Yeah. I believe that I could have been a sounding board for you, and that I could have been a safe haven and an encouragement to be able to rewrite some of those narratives and to change some of those lies that the enemy was telling you about you not being adequate as a father or as a husband to provide for our family. Yeah. But those things don't happen when you don't communicate. And so I would say to anyone that's in that place that you're suffering in silence, to make sure you find somebody to reach out to find somebody that you can trust, to go to a counselor, to go to a therapist, whatever you need, to go to a pastor, a teacher, a friend, whoever it is that you feel comfortable enough to just share what you're going through, share what you experience. We're not lone rangers in this world, and we need other people to connect with to be able to be okay in this world and to be able to deal with the trials and the pressures of life that the enemy brings. And then on the flip side, as a wife, I would also say to pay attention. Yes, I'm home with all the kids, and we had 3 kids at that time, and I'm pregnant. And so there's a lot going on. But one, keep your spouse in prayer, because you never know the things that the enemy is attacking them with, and the things that he's coming to bring, or the pressure that he's producing to try to hinder or to stop God's will to come to pass for your spouse's life. And then 2, just try to be sensitive to who they are. Try to be welcoming when they come home, and not just handing them the baby the first moment that they walk in the door, or fussing about the trash. And those are things, very real things, just out of transparency, that I did and that I dealt with. But had I known some of the deeper things that were happening and going on, had I been paying attention and not had my own selfish ambitions in some ways, I would have been able to help better in those situations, in that situation, and in any other time throughout that process of you going through moments of depression. And I think that that's worth looking at for any spouse, for any marriage, for any relationship, to make sure you're paying attention. Because what if it would have went the other way? What if I would have got the phone call that you ended your life? Then how would I have felt behind that, just being a wife and not even knowing that that's where you were in the midst of the process? So yeah.
And I think sometimes, as a husband, it's hard to have those conversations. I know. It's hard to have those conversations because you don't want to put your wife in that position to have to know what's happening or what you're feeling. You were pregnant.
Where hope meets.
Yeah, you are. At the same time, though, from a man's perspective, we don't put our problems on our wives or on the women that we are in relationship with. Again, you were pregnant with a baby, and I don't want my stress causing our baby to come out with 4 toes. Like, I need you to be relaxed. But also, I just didn't want you to worry all the time. I didn't want you to, excuse me, I didn't want you to be in this position of just worrying about things. We're supposed to be people of faith. We're pastors at this time. We're people of faith. We're believers. Like, I don't want you worrying about that. And how's it gonna look like when your pastor husband is saying, "Hey, I'm having these feelings," and I didn't have the suicide. That was the crazy part about it. I wasn't having suicidal thoughts. I wasn't having suicidal thoughts prior to that day. I was dealing with the stuff, and I was trying to work through as best as I could, but I never had the thought of ending it. It was just in that moment, Satan showed up. Now, I must admit, again, I should have been talking to you. I should have been saying things. And a lot of times, as men, and the Bible talks about the woman being the weaker vessel. And I think sometimes we take that so literal that we don't.
You don't think we can handle
it. We don't think that you can handle it, but we miss out on an opportunity for you to show us and to prove to us just how strong you really are. Yeah. And I can attest that the moments where I did come to you, the moments where I did talk, the moments where I have shared, I got some of the greatest breakthroughs that I ever could imagine, because I did talk and I did just be vulnerable and release it. Men, we try to be macho. We try to maintain this persona. Macho. Yeah, we try to maintain that because we are a pillar of strength. Yeah. And so, it's the whole men don't cry thing. Well, we cry, just not in front of y'all. We don't let y'all see that. We don't want y'all to see those spaces because we don't want to appear as weak. Now I do. I'm a crybaby. I'll cry in a heartbeat. I was almost crying just now.
You cried on our entire wedding.
I cried the entire wedding because you put too much of my business on the street. Now I do that now.
You're just smitten by my beauty.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Now I'm more vocal about what I feel and with my emotions, but at that time I wasn't. Yeah. Because we were dealing with so much, and I didn't want you carrying that and you having to deal with that. Because if I'm worried, then you worried. But if I'm worried about myself, then you ain't got nothing to worry about, as if you can't see that we ain't got stuff anyway. Like, you have your own set of worries. And I think sometimes we miss out on the opportunity to have community, you know what I'm saying? And to be able to help one another, because we're both going through the same exact thing. Like, we both can see that this baby on the last diaper, and there's only $5 left in the account, and diapers is $4.99.
Right.
We ain't even got enough for tax. So, what we gonna do, right? We both can see that, but for some reason, in my mind, it's my job to take care of this. Mm-hmm. It's my job to do this, and so I shouldn't even be coming to you about this. But that's where because
where is faith in that?
There isn't, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. Like, either you're going to take this on yourself, or you're going to allow God to be God. Yeah. And one of the things that I appreciate about you, and that I will always talk about, is how you never looked at me as the provider. Even to this very day, you never looked to me as, you got to take care of our family. You gotta pay for this. You gotta take care of X, Y, and Z. You never put that level of pressure on me, and I've always admired that. In Philippians 4:19, some people would disagree with this. Some people will say it is that man's job. Listen, go read your Bible. It'll bless you. Philippians 4:19 says that my God shall supply all of your needs. Yeah. Here's the problem. Too many of us have made the spouse that makes the most money the God. Yeah. Whether it be the husband or the wife. We've made our spouse or significant other the God. Yeah. And so now, when that God can't meet the need, then it's like, what are you doing? You ain't buy me that purse I wanted. You ain't take me on that vacation I wanted. You ain't do this. He wasn't called to be your sugar daddy. He was called to be your husband. Yeah. He's not called to be your God. He's called to be your husband. God is the one that will do the providing. And I will always be indebted to you for that. Like, that relieves so much pressure. That relieves so much pressure. Not that I'm not going to still go out here and do what I got to do. Not that I'm not going to still go out here and use what's in my hands and use what God has given me. But the pressure of, you got to do this. It allows me to use my faith and to believe God. And as a unit, we use our faith and we see God come through. Just like in that moment with the 6,000. Yeah.
And so, last episode, we talked about having faith for a car and seeing it show up. Mm-hmm. So where was faith in the midst of, from that time in our marriage to getting to this point of seeing the 6,000 unfold, but the trials throughout would happen to faith?
I think that part of it was not continuing to remember what God had done.
Wow, that's a big one.
Like, we didn't continue to remember what God did the last time. Yeah. And the time before that.
And so what did that cause?
It caused a lack of faith. Yeah. It caused a decrease in faith. Yeah. It caused me to waver.
I think it caused us to try to assume God in a way in our own lives, and just to take matters into our own hands.
Absolutely. We became our own God. Yeah. Philippians 4:19 became
how easy is
us.
That?
How easy it is to get to that point.
From moving from faith to seeing miracles like a car to getting to a place of being your own God.
It should be hard. Yeah. It should be a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. But I think for us it was, 5 years in the making?
Yeah.
So it takes time.
It takes time. Yeah. But the crazy thing is, we saw bigger, we'll talk about it. Yeah. We saw bigger testimonies. Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, that wasn't even, the 6,000, that wasn't even the biggest that we had seen. Yeah. Like, we had seen way bigger than that. Yeah. But when you don't remember, it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? And so part of faith is remembering the faith that you had. Yeah. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Yeah. Testimony loading, right? Mm-hmm. Your testimonies, they're continuously loading. But when you take your eye off of what God did, you stop praising Him for that. Yeah. You stop thanking Him for that. Now you move into worry. Yeah. You're worried about all the stuff that you don't have. You're looking at all the stuff that you need, and that keeps you from being in faith. Yeah. And now you get to this place of faithlessness, or you start wondering, God, are you going to do it? God, are you going to come through? Yeah. Yes, I did it before. I've done it. The sun and the moon still rise. I put it in the sky one time, and it's still there. What makes you think I'm not going to still provide for you when I've done it time and time and time and time again?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things, which we'll have to really unpack in another episode, is we got to a place where we felt like we had to maintain the promise. And so faith says, I believe for this and now I receive it. But faith is supposed to stay in position once you get the promise. It's not supposed to be this thing where we say, okay, now I got to maintain what God has given me or what God has allowed me to obtain in my life. Because when you cross over into that place of saying, I gotta maintain what God has given me, then we take it into our own hands. We assume God in our own lives, and we remove ourselves from faith. And that's the essence of what happened. Because the reason why we were even in that place of needing what we needed at that time and the amount of money we needed to sustain us was because of the blessing that God did do. And again, we're going to get into that in another episode very soon. But it just goes to show that when you try to maintain the promise, when God blesses you, when he manifests, when he favors you, when he does the very thing that you've been praying for and believing for, don't think it's your responsibility to maintain the thing that God has given over to you. You'll absolutely miss it. You'll absolutely blow it. You'll forfeit it. You'll end up in places. You'll be carrying things that God never intended you to carry. But it's all because you made the decision that I'm going to maintain what God has caused me to obtain. And that's not our jobs.
Absolutely. Listen, I want to leave you with this one last thought. I remember as a kid, I dealt with suicidal thoughts. Dealing with father issues, daddy issues as a kid. I remember being in a psych ward in Children's Hospital at 10 years old because I wrote a letter to my teacher telling her that I wanted to kill myself, right? It's important that you deal with those traumas. Yeah. Deal with your childhood traumas, people. Yeah. You've got to do that. Because in dealing with that, you stop the attack or the plan of the enemy to let it resurface and to come back up again. So even though I had not had thoughts of suicide since that time, we're talking 20 plus years later, I hadn't had those thoughts at that time, but because it was familiar, that familiar spirit showed up again. And now it's like, hey, what about this? Yeah. You've got to uproot and get that stuff out of you. Otherwise, it'll continue to show up time and time again.
Yeah. And back to the testimony portion, right? Like, let's end with that. How did that change everything for us? Receiving $6,000 in one day, how did that help us? What did that do for our faith? How did that change things?
It set our faith ablaze. Ablaze. Because now we can pay our bills. We can get some shrimp for dinner today.
Have we looked back since then?
We have not looked back since then. We have not looked back since then.
I think we learned the lesson, right? No more maintaining God's promises.
Nope. No more maintaining it. We couldn't maintain it. Yeah. It was literally up to God to maintain it. And when God was ready for that blessing to be transitioned out, he provided something else and put something else in place. Like, when the promise no longer looks like the promise, that's not an indication that you got to do everything you can to hold on to it. No, it's an indication that God is changing seasons. And so don't hold on to whatever God is changing, and don't try to maintain what God has given you. Keep doing what you did to get it. That's the biggest thing. Whatever you did to get it, keep doing it. If you shout a lot and you prayed and prayed and prayed, keep doing that. We should have kept praying like we did for the car. Kept praying every single day. Hand in hand, praying. And we've done that time and time again, where we just came together as a unit and we prayed and we saw God come through.
Where 2 or 3 are gathered,
there he is in the midst. Any two on earth, touching and agreeing. Anything that they ask, anything.
No disclaimers.
He didn't say some things.
It's all inclusive. Nothing's left out.
A little bit of things.
No.
A few things.
Everything.
Everything is made possible to him that can believe. And so, like, that 6,000, we was feeling good. We could pay the car note. We can pay the rent. I think we paid the rent for a couple months ahead. Like, we ain't going to be here again. We were able to buy diapers abundant.
God does it well, right?
He does. Absolutely. And that I'm telling you, like, God knew what we needed when we needed it. And he provided just that. And our faith was, we haven't looked back since then. Even in times where there were financial deficits, since then, our faith, we had a different way to look at it. Faith does not remove the realness of a problem or a situation. It just gives you a different vantage point and a different way to look at it. And I'm telling you, that was another notch in our faith belt to help us keep going forward.
Definitely a memorial of our faith.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, listen, this wraps up another episode of Testimony Tuesdays. We pray that this episode has been an absolute blessing to your life today. Listen, get the help that you need. If you're in the position where you're contemplating suicidal thoughts, if you're having anything going on, listen, there's a number right down at the bottom of the screen. Give it a call. There's a hotline available for somebody to speak to you directly to help get you through what you're going through. Now, there's another number popping up. If you have a prayer request, send us your prayer request and we would love to come in agreement with you. Send it to that number right there at the bottom of the screen. We would love to come into agreement with you and to believe God on your behalf.
Yes, we've had such an amazing time. We pray that you were tremendously blessed by this. And we hope to see you next week for another episode of Testimony Tuesday, where we talked about how God gave us 2 engagement rings. By faith, we see 2 engagement rings.
Not one.
Not one,
but
two. Two wedding rings. And so if you want to hear that, if you're in a place where you're believing for a ring, or you want to get married, or you're just believing for anything in general, it'll absolutely transform and change your day.
Absolutely. Listen, Revelation 19:10 declares that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
And if he did it for us, he will absolutely do it for you.
And remember, your testimony is loading. We'll see you next week. Peace. Hey, we're super excited about the release of our very first book, The 40 Days of Faith Daily Devotional and the Daily Journal. Do us a favor and scan the QR code on the screen, or go to the website listed and grab a copy for you and a friend today.